My parents favored my sister my whole life. Then she found out I had $20 million and had a full-blown meltdown. Ever felt like you were living in someone else's shadow, only for them to freak out when they realized you were standing in the sun? That's kind of my life. People hear about my multi-million-dollar portfolio and assume I had it easy. They don't see the years of being the other child. My name is Olivia, and I'm 35. This isn't a sob story, it's a how I got here story, and maybe someone out there can relate. My younger brother, Ethan, came into the world when I was 7. Not in a dramatic, emergency room way, but with a set of allergies so severe, it basically turned our suburban New Jersey home into a biohazard containment zone. My mom, bless her heart, became a full-time allergy warrior. Every surface was sanitized, every ingredient label triple checked. And if I so much as sneezed? Olivia, sweetie, is that a cold coming on? We can't risk Ethan getting sick. Pack a bag, you're going to Aunt Carol's for the weekend. Aunt Carol's was fine. Cable TV, endless cookies. But it became my second home. At first, it felt like mini vacations. Then, I started to get it. I was being sidelined. To prove I was worthy of attention, I became an overachiever. Straight A's, student council, captain of the soccer team. I even won the regional spelling bee. Ethan's health always trumped my achievements. Mom, Dad, look. I made the all-state team. I'd say, holding up my certificate. That's lovely, honey. Did you wash your hands? Ethan's having a particularly sensitive day, Mom would reply, barely glancing up. By the time Ethan was 10, his allergies had mostly subsided. He was a normal, rambunctious kid. But my parents? They were stuck. Years of hypervigilance had hardwired them. Ethan, realizing he had a superpower, their undivided attention, started using it. He'd pretend to have a flare-up whenever he wanted something, and they'd fall for it every time. High school was supposed to be my time. I was aiming for an Ivy League scholarship. I aced my AP classes, joined the Model UN, and even volunteered at a local soup kitchen. But Ethan's needs always came first. One evening, my guidance counselor, Mr. Henderson, called my parents. Olivia has a real shot at a full ride to Columbia, he said. She's one of the most promising students I've ever seen. Then, my mom's phone rang. Ethan was home with a babysitter, and he was devastated. What's wrong, honey? Mom asked, her voice laced with concern.
Ethan, through fake sobs, managed to say, I can't find my special blue highlighter.
The one Olivia has is awful. That was it. The conversation about my future was over. My parents raced home to comfort Ethan over a missing highlighter. After that, they stopped coming to my events. It's just easier, they reasoned. Ethan gets upset when he feels left out. When I won the state debate championship, they didn't even put my trophy on the mantelpiece. Ethan doesn't like seeing other people's awards, my mom explained, stashing it in a closet. Getting into college was my escape plan. I got a scholarship to NYU, not a full ride, but enough to cover tuition. I was ecstatic, until I got home. At dinner, Ethan barely looked up from his phone. Finally, he muttered. You can move out. I'm turning your room into my gaming den. I need, 4 monitors and a top-of-the-line streaming setup. Those college years were a blur. I lived on campus, treating home like a refueling station for obligatory Sunday dinners, where Ethan dominated the conversation with tales of his high school exploits. At 22, with a degree in finance, I landed a job at Sterling Cooper and Associates, a decent entry-level position. The salary wasn't amazing, but I had my own apartment in Brooklyn, and that was freedom. One day, scrolling through Instagram, an ad popped up, unlock your financial potential. Usually, I'd ignore these, but something made me click. It was an online course on investing. It cost a few $100s, but I figured I could swing it if I ate ramen for a month. That course changed everything. The instructor, a guy named Matt, made investing seem doable. I started small, putting a few $100s into tech stocks. Then, I got bolder. I researched, I learned about diversification, I took calculated risks. My first big win was a small investment in a renewable energy company that nobody was talking about. A $500 investment ballooned to $5,000 in 6 months. Then, a biotech startup doubled my money. Soon, I was making more from my investments than from my 9-to-5. The day I realized I could quit my job is crystal clear. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to care about spreadsheets, when I checked my investment app. A stock had hit its target. I did the math. My investment income had quadrupled my salary. Right there, I typed up my resignation letter. Still, I kept going to those Sunday dinners. Maybe it was habit, maybe it was a sliver of hope that things would be different. I'd sit there, eating my mom's bland pot roast, listening to them rave about Ethan, while my investments quietly made me a millionaire. "Olivia, you're still at Sterling Cooper, right?" Mom would ask, not really interested. "Yep, same old grind," I'd reply, knowing they'd tune me out anyway. It was easier that way. No need to explain that I'd quit 2 years ago and was now making more in a week than I used to make in a year. Ethan was the star of every meal. He'd gotten into Georgetown, a prestigious and expensive university. "It's a huge financial burden," Mom would sigh, but her voice was full of pride. "But Ethan deserves the best. We took out loans, but it's worth it for our boy's future." Ethan, twirling his fork, would add, "My roommate has a Tesla. Everyone there comes from such old money families." The implication was clear: we weren't good enough. Then, one Sunday, I found Mom crying over a pile of bills. Dad was staring at the mortgage statement, looking defeated. "Property taxes went up again," he mumbled. "And with Ethan's tuition." Seeing them struggle, I thought about all the times they'd prioritized Ethan. But they were still my parents. That night, I set up an automatic transfer of $5,000 a month to their account. When I told them, Mom actually hugged me, a rare event. "Oh, Olivia, this is a lifesaver." I held on to a tiny hope that things might change, that they'd finally see me. That hope died when I overheard them in the kitchen. "We should give some of Olivia's money to Ethan," Mom suggested. "At least $3,000. He feels so out of place with all those wealthy kids." Dad agreed instantly. "Good idea. He needs to keep up appearances. Maybe he can finally get that designer laptop he's been wanting." I wanted to scream. To tell them I was a multimillionaire, that I could buy Georgetown if I wanted to. But I didn't. I just stood there, shaking my head. By 28, I was ready for a change. My investments had exceeded my wildest dreams, and I was done with renting. After months of searching, I found the perfect condo, a penthouse in a new building with breathtaking views of the Manhattan skyline. The best part? I could buy it in cash. No mortgage, no debt, no strings. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, listening to the city hum below. This was mine. When Mom called, ostensibly to check in, but really to talk about Ethan, I casually mentioned I was moving. "Did you find a cheaper place?" she asked, distracted. "Just different," I replied. "Better neighborhood." "Well, don't overspend, honey," she warned. "You know how volatile the job market is in your industry." I almost laughed. If only she knew my industry now involved managing millions, not filing paperwork. At the next family gathering, Aunt Carol asked about my new place. Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. "Olivia's renting a new apartment," she said dismissively. "But wait till you hear about Ethan's news. He's graduating at the top of his class from Georgetown." As always, it became the Ethan show. Everyone gushed about his bright future, occasionally glancing at me with pity. "Ethan's going places," Dad declared. "Not that we're surprised. He's always been our star. Companies are already fighting over him." Unlike some people who settle for mediocrity, my cousin muttered to his wife, just loud enough for me to hear. I sipped my wine, thinking about the stock deal I'd closed that morning, a deal that had made me more money in a day than he made in a year. But I said nothing. Then came Ethan's graduation party. Mom and Dad went all out, catered food, fancy decorations, the works. I couldn't help but notice that a significant chunk of the money I'd been sending them had gone towards this extravaganza. But I was used to it. Ethan strutted around in his cap and gown like he'd just discovered the cure for cancer. He cornered me by the bar. "Look at this, Olivia," he said, shoving his diploma in my face. "Georgetown. Not some state school like you went to. And I already have interviews lined up with Fortune 500 companies. I'm not going to end up a corporate drone like you." I took another sip of my drink. "Congratulations, Ethan. That's all you have to say?" He scoffed. "Aren't you jealous? I mean, I'm going to be so successful, and you're just, you." He stood there, practically vibrating with the need for me to admit he was superior. I could have told him about my investments, my penthouse, how I made more before breakfast than he'd make in his entire first year on the job. But what was the point? Instead, I shrugged and walked away. 3 months after graduation, Ethan was still looking for the right opportunity. Those Fortune 500 companies weren't as eager as he'd thought. Meanwhile, the student loan bills had arrived. One evening, Mom called. "Olivia, do you have a minute?" I knew what was coming. Ethan's loan payments. She hesitated, trying to sound dramatic. They're crushing us, honey. And with all our other expenses, I hate to ask, but how much? I interrupted, already regretting it. Well, if you could increase your monthly contribution to $8,000, it would be a miracle. I thought about all the times they dismissed my achievements, all the times Ethan had mocked me. But I also thought about my bank account, sitting comfortably in the 8-figure range. Something my family knew nothing about. Fine, I said. I'll adjust the payments. Mom barely got her thank you out before launching into plans for the money. This will help so much with Ethan's loans, and maybe we can get him some decent suits for interviews. A few weeks later, Ethan finally landed a job, at the same company where Dad had connections. He just so happened to be golfing buddies with the CEO. The irony wasn't lost on me when he waltzed in with the title of junior executive. One weekend, I dropped by my parents' house and found Ethan sprawled on the couch, scrolling through apartment listings. Everything is ridiculously overpriced, he complained. I can't believe I have to stay here with Mom and Dad. It's so embarrassing. You could get a smaller place, I suggested. Or maybe look outside the city center. He gave me a look like I'd suggested he live in a dumpster. I need to be in the right neighborhood, Olivia. Not that you'd understand. Some of us have standards. I glanced around at our parents' modest living room, where he was currently living rent-free, but I kept quiet. He sighed, tossing his phone aside. This is just temporary. Unlike you, I won't be stuck as a junior executive forever. I have real potential. As Thanksgiving approached, Mom went into her usual pre-holiday frenzy. Every year, she insisted on doing everything herself, turning the kitchen into a disaster zone. But this year was different. I don't know what I'm going to do, she wailed over the phone a week before Thanksgiving. I threw out my back lifting Ethan's gym bag, and now I can barely move. How am I supposed to cook for 25 people? Why don't I handle it? I suggested. I can have it catered from that new place downtown, the Gilded Fork. Mom's tone instantly brightened. You're such a lifesaver, Olivia. I don't know what we'd do without you. On our video call, I caught a glimpse of Ethan in the background, rolling his eyes. Even the smallest compliment directed at me was enough to ruin his mood. Thanksgiving Day arrived, unfolding like every other family gathering. The catered food arrived on time, and I helped Mom set everything up, while doing my best to ignore Ethan's constant complaints about how store-bought cranberry sauce could never compare to homemade. I brought my laptop, since the European markets would be open during dinner, and I had investments to monitor. I set it up in my old bedroom, left it running, and went to join the family. The food was amazing, far better than Mom's usual dry turkey. As everyone settled in with their plates, Mom couldn't resist mentioning her injury. I was so worried about how I'd manage, she told the room full of aunts, uncles, and cousins. But Olivia stepped in and arranged for this wonderful catered meal. Wasn't that thoughtful? That was incredibly generous of you, Olivia, Aunt Carol said warmly. I imagine it wasn't cheap. Oh, it's nothing, I replied, waving it off. I'm just glad everyone's enjoying it. She makes enough at that corporate job to help us out quite a bit, Mom added proudly, probably the first time she'd ever openly acknowledged anything I did. Across the table, Ethan's face darkened. Without warning, he shoved his chair back and stormed out. I thought it was just one of his usual tantrums, but something felt different. When he returned, he was holding my laptop, a smirk on his face. Let's see just how well Olivia's really doing, he announced, his voice dripping with malice. Since she's so generous, she won't mind if I show everyone her bank balance. Time to expose the truth. I jumped up. Ethan, don't. But it was too late. He'd already turned the laptop around. My banking app, still open from earlier, was on full display. The room went silent. Ethan's expression twisted as the color drained from his face. His hands trembled. He looked like he was about to drop the laptop. Ethan? Mom's voice was shaky. What is it? What does it say? Ethan's voice was a whisper. 20 million. The silence was deafening. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint clinking of silverware. There must be some mistake, Aunt Carol murmured, leaning closer. Olivia's just a junior executive, or something. I haven't worked at Sterling Cooper in years, I said calmly, finally telling the truth. I left to focus on investing full-time. I took courses, I studied the markets, I became good at it. You mean, you're rich? Ethan's voice cracked. I took a deep breath, looking at the stunned faces around me. I've been investing for years. I started small, I learned, and yes, that account has $20 million in it. I wasn't hiding it. You all just never asked. The silence lasted barely 3 seconds before Mom shattered it with a shriek. 20 million? She jumped up, her face turning red. You've had $20 million, and you let us struggle? I stared at her, incredulous. Struggle? I send you $8,000 every month. Her voice rose to a piercing pitch. Your brother has student loans. We have bills. How could you be so selfish, so unbelievably greedy? Dad's face was contorted with fury. We raised you better than this, Olivia. You've been sitting on all this money while your own family suffers. Something inside me snapped. Years of being the overlooked child, the dependable but unimportant daughter, came crashing down. Oh, so saving money is a crime now? That's rich, I scoffed, though there was nothing funny about it. Tell me, where were Mom and Dad's magical savings when it was time to pay for your college, Ethan? Oh, that's right, they never saved a dime because they spent everything on you. But here's the kicker, they didn't pay for my education either. I earned a scholarship while you racked up loans for your fancy private school. That's completely different, Mom snapped. Ethan needed. Ethan needed. Ethan wanted. Ethan. I cut her off, my voice rising. It's always been about Ethan. Well, here's a reality check, my money is mine. Every single dollar. I earned it. $8,000, is that what you said? A month is nothing to you. Mom shot back. You should be giving us at least $15,000. We're your parents. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. $15,000? So you can keep spoiling your golden child? I turned to Ethan, who was backing away. You wanted to expose me as a failure? How's that working out for you? The sister you mocked for being a corporate drone turned out to be the one who actually made something of herself. Tell me, Ethan, how does that feel? The entire family sat frozen, forks suspended in mid-air, watching the disaster unfold like a twisted reality show. If you're so successful, Mom sneered, then you should be supporting your family. That's your duty. My duty? I stepped closer to Ethan and snatched my laptop from his shaking hands. No. My duty ended the moment you decided I didn't matter. You poured everything into Ethan because he was the special one, with the bright future. Well, go ahead, let him in that bright future of his take care of you. Aunt Carol tried to intervene. Maybe we should all calm down. But it was too late. Mom and Dad were both yelling now, their voices blending into a deafening roar of anger, blame, and entitlement. Ethan had burst into tears, his go-to move when things didn't go his way. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked out of the house I'd once called home. As I reached my car, I could still hear my mother's furious voice screeching behind me. The messages started before I even got back to my penthouse. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls, texts, all from Mom, Dad, and Ethan. At first, they were furious, demanding. Then, they shifted to guilt-tripping. I tried responding at first, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand. But it was useless. They didn't want to understand. They wanted my money. Then Mom took it to Facebook. Her post was a masterpiece of manipulation. My heart is broken to discover that my eldest daughter has become wealthy while her family struggles. She refuses to help her brother with his student loans or support her aging parents. Money truly does change people. Please keep Olivia in your prayers, so she remembers the meaning of family. The backlash was swift and brutal. Family, friends I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly had strong opinions about me. How could she be so heartless? I always knew there was something off about her. What kind of person abandons their own family? Mom eagerly engaged with every comment, responding with crying emojis and messages of gratitude for their support. The relatives who had actually witnessed the Thanksgiving meltdown remained silent, but their silence did nothing to stop the flood of judgment. Strangers and distant acquaintances labeled me selfish, ungrateful, cruel. That was the final straw. I opened my banking app and stared at the automatic transfers to my parents, $8,000 every month, money they had dismissed as if it meant nothing. With a single tap, I canceled it. Then, I sent one last message to Mom. I've stopped the payments. I'm done being your ATM. Don't contact me again. But they didn't understand. The calls escalated, flooding my phone at all hours. Ethan used different numbers to reach me when I blocked his. Dad left endless voicemails, droning on about my supposed obligation to family. Mom doubled down on her social media theatrics, twisting the narrative further. I blocked them all, phone numbers, emails, every social media account they could use to reach me. But I knew they wouldn't stop there. So, I took precautions. I called Michael, the concierge at my building. I need to put some names on the do not allow list, I told him. I provided their full names, descriptions, even showed him their pictures. He nodded, noting everything down. Sure enough, the very next day, Michael called. My parents and Ethan had shown up, trying to force their way in. They made a scene in the lobby, shouting threats and claiming they'd call the police. That night, I sat down with my laptop and started browsing real estate listings in Montana. Maybe it was time for a fresh start, somewhere they couldn't find me. Some would call it running away. I call it setting boundaries. They had their chances, years of them. They could have supported me, acknowledged my hard work, treated me with the same love and respect they showered on Ethan. Instead, they belittled me, dismissed my success, and only came running when they wanted my money. Now that I've seen their true colors, I feel no guilt in cutting them off. As I scroll through listings in Big Sky Country, all I feel is relief. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. Even if it means walking away from family.